Hello, I quite literally am pressing the record button 10 seconds after the stop button of the previous episode. I didn't even edit it yet. I'm gonna upload them probably in bulk. This is going to be the second episode of the drawing a plane tutorial. And so I have, of course, already drawn the hull. And in this, there wasn't that much perspective stuff going on, besides, of course, the cross sections, which were kind of aligned in this direction. The only perspective we really did was this one line, which went towards the singular point, where the perspective comes from. And of course, the angle of all of this and stuff, and the fact that it kind of gets the hull slightly gets smaller as it gets into the distance as well, but not to be confused with the tapering. Like as you see that these two lines, this line here and this line here, are mostly, what is it called? Not diagonal. They go in the same direction. They're at the same angle to each other. Which basically means that this is because this is a sideways view. Here, I'm not sure if I actually have enough distance to show it off, but these lines slightly go towards each other. Yeah, it's visible. Even at the parts where the hull is supposed to be where the two lines are supposed to be parallel, because of perspective, they kind of go closer. And if you see this, you see that the distance here and here is different, because if you look at this one, you can see that this one is a bit shorter. You have this whole distance which is missing. So that's basic perspective. Sadly, for any of you viewers who thought this would be all of it, we are also going with the more complex version, which is the 2-point perspective, because trust me, it's gonna help you a lot. So I'm gonna get rid of this. There's probably gonna be a trick I show a little bit later on for this, but yeah. Back to drawing. I'm just gonna quickly fix up this part of the hull. The next thing we need to add on to this, in terms of just what I need to draw, is 2 additional hulls, because this is a tri-hull plane. But the thing is that those hulls are gonna have quite an interesting perspective due to just the way that, well, perspective works. So we need to set some things up. First off, we need to find a point where all of these lines converge. So first off, we take the main line. We use a ruler. The digital one works pretty similarly to the real life one, so just no need to stress about that. It goes up to here. This goes up to here. And now we see the point where they kind of intersect, so logically this part should go in the same way, and it does, because we did do the measurements correctly for the central line. The central line is actually the one with the least priority. The top and the bottom one should be the ones which you use to find the convergence. So now it goes from somewhere like here to here, so you can assume this is the center of the perspective. So now here's a bit of a thing for all of you who are going to use this for not drawing digitally. There's gonna be just a bit of a difference, because I will have the I'll have the easy task of just I'll have tools to use, but I'll try not to use them just for the sake of being applicable in non-digital drawing. So we have this point. And now, if you are working on digital drawing, you can actually take, if your drawing program has it, a 2-point perspective, and place one of the perspective points on here. And now you might remember that I've said we're going to use 2-point perspective, and you might be thinking, where does the other line go? And, well, the answer is, you most of the time want it to be aligned with the horizon, but for now we first need to actually figure out where we're going to place it. So I remove the the perspective tool, and I take another ruler. This one's going to be a bit more difficult, because we have the limitations of our canvas. So we take this line, and this also kind of requires your lines to be kind of properly aligned. If you're not sure how correctly you have drawn them, you can always just go with the option of judging where these lines would go yourself. And that's not a bad approach by any means. Okay, to prove it, I'm gonna do something like that as well. So I can see this looks pretty natural if I place another line here. They can see how this like the size of the line reduces as it goes into the distance. Now the issue is, of course, I am gonna have to somehow measure where this is. So the best way, the way that I will do it is I will try to see where this line goes. I'll switch back and forth in between my ruler and my perspective tool. But this is just because this is a digital program. It's a bit easier to do this on paper. And I will kind of basically figure out where these two lines intersect, which is somewhere about here. So now, let's see, this, okay, it needs to be a bit further away. Okay, so now we see this is correct, I think. It's a bit difficult to tell right now, but if I draw this line out even further, and I draw this line out even further, you can see that it aligns with the previous things I've set up. So you want to have a similar kind of setup on paper as well. We have these basic lines just set up to know which directions, you know, your plane is facing. Now this is also important thing to know. This is a fairly basic perspective in terms of it not being like like if the camera where we were, if like the point of view was somewhere from the front, so we had to draw the plane really interestingly like here, and then have the wings like go here and the tail go like back there and make it all difficult. That is not something that's as easy. I mean, you can still use the same methods and it will work fairly well, but it's just a lot more difficult. So that's a heads up if you're going to be trying to do it in that perspective. Now, this part is done. We have the basic perspective set down. Now, we need to set down the two additional hulls. And now you might be thinking, well, what does this plane look like? So I'm gonna do a short short thing in this tutorial, which is another very useful trick I use, and that is a small blueprint which I usually draw. And I never draw it first. I mean, I sometimes draw it first, but I mostly start from the rough sketch of the hull. Last thing is some kind of just cockpit. It could just be a general box. It doesn't need to be too precise. And that's basically that. So now we have our blueprint, at least the top-down one. And now we can move on to the part where we basically draw the additional hulls. Now, I am going to kind of have to estimate where the hulls are going to be from this point. I mean, I'm gonna be fairly precise, but you can't really calculate it because there is a perspective, so more distant things are smaller. So let's see, one width of the hull that goes, okay, so it's about 2 times the width of the hull. So that means it goes up to like here, here, and this is the outer end of the hull right here. I can use the perspective tool to check if this line has been placed correctly, but I will only use that here as an example. Because it, as I said, it can be done by hand fairly easily. So now we look at the second one. It stretches up to like here, and you see that this is now, this like seems like a bit of a smaller distance, and that's exactly for the reason of the perspective. And now another one goes about here, and so this is our second point. Now I'm just gonna think up some kind of good shape for the hull. And I'm gonna try to draw a cross section for it as well. Now, since we are not using a 3-point perspective, all of these lines like here, should be going mostly in the same direction. You don't really need them to all go towards a specific point, because a plane is so flat that you don't really need it. You don't have like the verticality to actually require a 3-point perspective. I mean, you can use it, but I don't think the advantages or anything you should really be, they're not really that important. So we have a basic cross section. It's not that good if it's meant to carry cargo, but this is not that important. I don't want them to be too large either. I might just make them, actually, now that I think of it, a bit higher and a bit more square near the bottom end. This will also make them kind of simple to make in simple planes, which is a whole different thing that I'll explain later. So yeah, we have this. We're gonna copy it over to the next side. So, we have these two. This one might seem a little bit smaller than it should be. If it ends up that it's not just perspective, I can always fix it up. So now, let's get to drawing the rest of the hull. The next thing I will do is I will make, here's the next thing, and it's very important. These two hulls are not going to be, they are technically speaking going parallel to the main hull. However, due to perspective, if we were to draw them at this angle right here, they would be incorrect. If you look at it like this, wait, let me just draw this. You can see how horrendously incorrect they look, even though these two lines are parallel to the bottom side of the hull. So this is, as we all know, due to perspective. So we fix that by quite literally taking the line from the and making a line in between the point where the starting point of the line here near the cross section of the hull and the end point right here, which is the perspective point. So we draw the hull from here on. I'm just gonna do very basic setups here because I like drawing by hand a lot more than with rulers. It makes the final product look a lot more crisp, which sounds a bit weird because, you know, like rulers create straight lines. But you won't be able to make everything with a ruler, and in the end it will turn out that nothing will really fit together because you have these really precise lines as well as the hand-drawn style. So yeah, we have these two. Now we close them. And let's get to the next part. Since we have the basic directions of the hull, we can draw them by hand. I'm gonna go look back to my reference for this. So these hulls go a bit more behind the main hull. And if I need to help myself with this, I will quite literally measure it out. So we know this line is... I'm gonna somehow try to connect it to the previous lines I have set up. And let's see. So this goes to like here. So since this keeps going, okay, this is a bit imprecise. We know that this is the point where it needs to be mirrored from, so it's gonna be somewhere about here. But we'll see if that's the case because we need to draw the other side as well. I'm gonna start with the bottom line here, because if you see up here, the outward edge curves inward, so it's a lot simpler to just go with the side that won't be curving first because you'll have a solid reference. Now let's see. Here's the little planning mistake I did. This isn't really useful right now because I'm drawing the lower line and that's not supposed to align with this one. So just draw till somewhere like here. And now let's go to the next part of the hull. You just draw the parts you understand until the parts you don't understand, the perspective and everything off, kind of get solved by the previously drawn parts. Might sound a bit confusing, but trust me, it will probably work out fine. So at about the 50% there point, it starts curving inwards and it doesn't go that much further from here. So I will try to make it like this. Okay, the cat's back in the room. So, back to drawing. What was he doing again? Oh, yeah. So, we're deleting this part. And we're moving the entire hull a bit more here inwards because, yeah, that's how the hull curves. I did a bit of a mistake there, but I also did prove that it's fairly simple to fix. So, this hull is... it needs to go a little bit more further. This hull is mostly done. This is gonna be good enough for now. I'm just gonna fix up this part. Remember, this is not the lines of the final what the final thing is going to be. So don't worry if they look messy. It gets bad if there's so many lines that you can't even understand what is what. So that's just the thing you gotta watch out for. If you are on digital though, you can always just use additional layers for that. But if you are hand drawing, then you run into the issue of having to slowly erase everything or do the cool thing like I do and ink over it with rapidographs. I'm not sure what they're called in English. Basically like inking pens. So yeah. Let's see. We have this part set down. Due to the hull kind of going upwards, this part looks a bit elevated. Oh, wait, I need to, yeah, get that back. But this is not fully not fully the reason, because if you remember, the back parts of the hull go further than the main hull. Of the side hulls go further back than the main hull. So yeah, this is not an issue because we'll have another detail on it. So now the last thing we need to do is just close off the front with a basic cap, because you can't have this sharp of a thing drawn onto a plane if you want it to be at least somewhat realistic. This is the 2 additional hulls drawn. So, this is gonna be it for the perspective tutorial. There's gonna be a lot more perspective, but it's not gonna be, it's gonna be more dedicated to the specific things we're drawing. So yeah, this is it for this tutorial. I'll jump on to making the next one, since these are probably gonna be fairly easy to edit.